Hey everybody, welcome back to another video on routing. This time we're going to be going over Gateway of Last Resort. As always, the resources for these videos can be found in the link in the video description below. I highly recommend downloading them if for nothing else than to store them as your notes. It's really useful to have as a reference in the future if you ever forget how to do some of these things. So Gateway of Last Resort is basically a static route for all the networks that your router isn't sure how to reach. So you're offloading the responsibility of finding the destination network to somebody else. That's usually the internet. A Gateway of Last Resort would be a network of 0000 with a subnet mask of 0000, which translates to all the networks that I don't know how to reach. This is the route for them. So if we come down here and we actually look at the lab, we can see that we've got a network over here, and then this red network over here. And in reality, if this was the internet, there could be hundreds if not thousands of routers in between these two networks. So it's not really feasible for either of these edge routers to know how to reach the other network directly. But if we set them both up with a Gateway of Last Resort and point that gateway towards the internet, then there will probably be a router somewhere out on the internet that does have a direct route to the other network. And that way we can get these two networks to communicate. So we hop into this, we'll go over our tasks. Task number 1 says cable the networks, PCs to switch, switches to router. Let's go ahead and come down to our connections. Let's just grab a copper straight through. Go from each of our computer Ethernet ports. We'll just throw it on port 1 of the switch. Doesn't really matter. And we'll go from the switch, we'll go ahead and do G01 to the G001 of the routers. Go ahead and copy that over to the other side. Oh, missed it. Missed it again. Third time's the charm. Port 1 on the switch. And from the switch, Gigabit Ethernet 01 to the routers, Gigabit Ethernet 001. Alright, boom, looks good. Network is cabled. So now, task number 2, configure in-use router ports with IP addresses that correspond with the networks they are in. Alright, let's go ahead and start here on router 1. Move this out of the way so we can still see our network. Go ahead and get into privileged exec mode and then into global configuration mode. So we know that we just hooked that inside cable up to interface G001. We'll do him first. We'll go IP add. Looks like the network is 172.16.0. We'll give him the first IP, .1. Network mask is a /24. Then go ahead and no shut to bring that interface up. Now we'll hop out onto the other interface, which is G000. Give that an address of 30.30.30.1 following the diagram. It's the subnet mask of 255.255.255.252, which is the same as a /30. No shut that guy. That should be good for that router. Hop into router 0 over here and do the same thing. Go into privileged exec mode and then into global configuration mode. Start with interface G001, which is our inside interface. Give it an IP address of 192.168.0.1, that first address in the network, with a /24 subnet mask. No shut to bring the interface up. Hop into our G000 interface, which faces the internet. Give it an IP address of 20.20.20.1 according to the diagram, with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.252. No shut. Bring that interface up. Okay. Looks good for task 2. Alright, moving on to task 3. We'll go ahead and configure each switch with a management IP and a default gateway. This is just so that we remember how to do this. Go ahead and hop into our switch over here. Get into global configuration mode. We'll go ahead and hop into VLAN 1, the interface VLAN 1, the default VLAN that's on these switches. We'll give them an IP address. This one's 172.16.0.2, our second usable IP address in this subnet. Go ahead and no shut that, bring it up. Go ahead and exit out of this and give it a default gateway of 172.16.0.1, which is our router. Okay, that should be good for that switch. Let's hop over into the switch on the other side. Get into global configuration mode. Hop into interface VLAN 1. This IP will be 192.168.0.2. That's our second usable IP in this network. Of course, we need to use the right command, IP address. Make sure we no shut that because it's down by default. Exit out of the interface configuration mode. Go ahead and give it an IP default gateway, 192.168.0.1, which is our router. And that should be good for that task. Moving on to task 4, configure IPs on the computers that correspond with the networks they are in. So we'll go ahead and give them each the third usable IP address. So on this one, that would be 172.16.0.3 with 255.255.255.0 because that's a /24. Its gateway is going to be the router, 172.16.0.1. Should be good. Hop into the computer on the other network. Should be 192.168.0.3. That subnet mask, 192.168.0.1. The address of the router for the default gateway, and that looks good. Moving on. Task number 5, ping within each individual network to ensure you have LAN connectivity. So we start with this PC. We ping our switch. We should be able to reach that because we gave it an IP address and brought the interface up. And there we go. Next we can ping our router. And that looks good. Let's hop over into the PC on the other network and perform the same tests. We ping our switch, 192.168.0.2. Give Packet Tracer a moment to figure out what's happening. Usually it drops the first packet, but there you can see that we do have communication with our switch. Go ahead and ping the router. And we can reach him as well. So we know that each local network is configured and devices can talk to each other. So task 6, verify there's no connectivity between the left network and the right network. So we hop into our computer over here on the right. If we try and ping the computer on the left, 192.168.0.3, we can see our message from our router saying destination host unreachable. That's usually a good indication that your router does not have a route to that IP address, and he does not have a gateway of last resort set. Let's move on to the next task. Task number 7 says configure a gateway of last resort on each router. Start with router 1. Remember, gateway of last resort is just a static route to the 0000 network with 0000 subnet mask. So we just go IP route 00000000. We have to tell it where to send these packets. So we're going to go ahead and say send them out our outside interface towards the internet. And that would be G000. Okay, let's hop into our other router and do the same thing. Get into global configuration mode. IP route 00000000 out our G000 interface. Okay. We go ahead and do some validation here. We can do show IP route, and we can see that we have a gateway of last resort to this network, which essentially is all networks that I don't have in my routing table. So now if we move on to task number 8, verify that there is now connectivity between the left and right networks. Because we've set those default gateways, even though our routers don't know the exact route to the other network, they'll forward that packet onto the internet, and someone on the internet should have a route to that network. So if we go ping 192.168.0.3, Take a second for Packet Tracer to figure out what it's doing. Probably lose the first packet. And there we got it right at the end. So now that we know that path, the Packet Tracer's cooperating, we can see we do have connectivity across the networks and we reach the other side. So that was Gateway of Last Resort in a nutshell. Not super in depth, but it is something valuable to know. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope that you'll join me in the next one.